Welcome to HortTube. My name is Jim Putnam. This video is going to be all about compact growing low growing plants, kind of low maintenance things that you can put up against a foundation or under a low window, someplace where you need something that doesn't get very tall and doesn't require a heck of a lot of maintenance. There is a part 1 to this video that I'll link up here in the corner and down below that has 20 or 30 pieces on it. This is just picking up from that. And we'll start with this Distilleum. I didn't mention Distilleum in that first video. This variety right here is called Jewel Box. And on the tag, it's listed for 2 to 3 feet in height, maybe 3 to 4 feet in width. Great little evergreen shrub with blue-green foliage. Gets a red flower along the stem in the spring that's actually quite showy for a Distilleum. These aren't known for being great flowering plants. But this one is probably the most compact at this point. Distilleum, just a perfect little low growing mound. I'd probably put most of the other Distilleum varieties in a medium-sized shrub video. Again, when we're talking about these labels, this is going to say 2 to 3 feet in height, 3 to 4 feet in width. That's maintainable at. It will try to creep up through that over the years, but easily maintainable between 2 and 3 feet. My friends at Pender Nursery have let me film out here for these videos, these collections of videos, and I found a young crop of Goshiki osmanthus. This is a really great slow growing evergreen shrub, or whatever color you want to call this. This variegation is amazing. Goshiki means 5 colors in Japanese, and so as you see new growth on this plant during the season, you get these pinks and reds, and then it settles into this like creamy white and green variegation. Just a beautiful, beautiful plant. Shooting this going into fall, and it'll look like this even in the winter time. This one's a little slow to flower. Osmanthus have great fragrant flowers. It takes sometimes years for this one to flower. Once it does, it'll flower during the cool season months. You're going to see this plant labeled anywhere from getting 3 feet in height to 10 feet in height, and that's accurate. This plant is slow growing and can kind of be kept any size you want between 3 and 10 feet. There's one at the Ralston where they've never pruned it, the Ralston Arboretum in Raleigh, and it's probably 7 or 8 feet, has a little pyramid without doing any pruning on it whatsoever. But again, it could be kept in that 3 to 4 foot range on your foundation. Just a great plant. In the first compact plant video, I showed Radiance Abelia, and I think you can see some up here in the next bed over there. And I talked about Kaleidoscope and Miss Lemon. These are 3 really great compact growing variegated Abelia. I wanted to shoot this little group right here because it's in full flower and it smells amazing. When you have one plant in your landscape, you won't really pick up on the fragrance as much, but in these larger groups in flower, it's just amazing. Pollinators absolutely love these plants. It's really, really compact, really, really easy. I will say Kaleidoscope turns kind of an orangey color in the wintertime. And so if you got like a brick foundation or something, this might not be a great plant to put up against it, where Radiance and Miss Lemon will hold their color a little better. But it really is a great plant and a low maintenance, easy plant. Blooms all summer once it gets started. Come to the ground cover Juniper section, and I think pretty much everything over here will end up in a ground cover video. But they do have some gray owl junipers, and this one has this amazing blue-green color year-round. And I would put this one almost in the small shrub category. It will spread more than it will come upright, but it ends up, when I see it in the landscape, in that 3 to 4 foot range, and does that on its own. Really don't have to do anything to this plant, other than you'll probably have to bring it in a bit, because it will try to get wider than tall. But this is really great. Super drought tolerant and honestly underused plant for this beautiful coloration. It's going to be great color contrast. It's going to be great texture contrast with the other things that you're using in your landscape. But again, we could argue whether this one's a ground cover or a low shrub. I'm going to go with low shrub. In the first compact plant video, I showed one called Dragonpine. I have 2 of them at the home garden, one in the ground. And it's maybe 1.5 feet tall and 2 feet wide at this point. And then there's one in a container as well. And I talked about Globosinaena, but we didn't show it. Globosinaena is a bit more fluffy. That's how I would describe it. Dragonpine is has a little more of a compact habit. I could put this one in the compact plant or low growing category, which is what you're going to see it in this video. I could also put this in the medium plant category as well. It's easily maintainable around 3 feet, so you can keep it as a perfect little low dome. If you never, ever, ever prune it, it'll eventually just creep up to about 5 feet. Again, there's no off switch for these plants. But one of the great things about this particular conifer, I think it's extremely heat tolerant compared to some others that we'll show you in some of these other videos. So for those of us in the South, it makes a great, great option. And it's also soft to the touch, which a lot of these conifers are, they bite back when you touch them. There were 3 low-growing hollies that I discussed in the first video but did not show. There was Hugendorn right here. Touch of Gold holly, the gold one that I showed in the first video, is a gold version of this. Hugendorn is a great low-growing holly. I think it's, this one's just kind of, I don't know why it's never been the top seller, honestly, of all of the Japanese low-growing hollies. The one on the right over here is called Soft Touch. It probably is the best-selling one, and it's probably the wimpiest plant. Even yesterday, Steph and I were riding through the neighborhood, and somebody had planted like 20 of these in their front garden, and 10 of them were dead. We just see it all the time with this particular variety, that Soft Touch. The native one, low-growing option, is our Dwarf Yopon holly, which is just this is how it grows. Perfect little dome like this. The regular Yopon holly will be in the screening plant video. There's a weeping Yopon holly, and then there's a Dwarf Yopon holly. Again, like I've said several times now, if you don't prune this plant ever, it will get quite big. There's one in the neighborhood that's over 6 feet in height. I'd never seen a Dwarf Yopon holly that tall, but there is one in the neighborhood that's over 6 feet. It's probably 25 years old, maybe more, but it easily can be kept in the 3-foot range. But if you want a native option, Dwarf Yopon. As far as I'm going to rank the Japanese hollies, I think Hugendorn is the best, or that Touch of Gold, the gold one that was in the first video. Here's one more Japanese holly for the the compact plant group. This is Helleri, been around for a long, long time. Again, this one also I've seen creep up 4 or 5 feet in height and as much as 8 feet in width if it's not ever pruned, but really, really easy to keep this one in the 2 to 3 foot range and 3 to 4 feet in width. I do think, again, I think Hugendorn's a better overall plant than Helleri, but Helleri's also better than Soft Touch, and just in being, this one, Soft Touch just kind of took this one's place. This was always the kind of go-to compact, Japanese holly, boxwood looking plant that wasn't as expensive as boxwoods, because boxwoods grow slower in nurseries, so they tend to be a little more expensive. So this is like your boxwood replacement plant, and Soft Touch is just kind of taking that over, and I don't think it's not a great ornamental plant, not a great landscape plant. This is Helleri. This is a new crop of Touch of Gold holly, which I showed in the first video. This is a golden Helleri, so I wanted to show you that this is the gold version of Hugendorn. There's also a gold Helleri, there's a gold Soft Touch, there's a gold version of all of them. The gold is not quite as pronounced on Helleri, and it doesn't hold up in the sun quite as well, but if you have a kind of a part shade spot, it needs some light to get the gold tips, to get the gold new growth on it. But tends to, like I say, it cooks a little bit in the absolute full sun. But it's a great little plant. It is. But I think that, as you can see side by side, Touch of Gold is definitely, a bigger pop of color. Another great medium-sized shrub that I've got some experience with is this Nightlight Chamaecyparis. This is a Southern Living Plant Collection piece. This one on the tag says 4 to 5 feet by 4 to 5 feet, and that's what it looks like it will be doing over the next few years. Right now, it's been in the ground for about right at 2 years, probably at this point, maybe not quite, and it's reached 2.5 by 2.5. It has never been touched by any pruning shears. It just grows in this perfect round ball. Very, very heat tolerant for a Chamaecyparis or a false cypress. Super impressed with this plant. It's, I'm shooting this in September. It's got a tiny bit of bleaching on the top that you would see on a lot of gold conifers by late summer, but it's only a tiny bit, and it's been in the full sun all summer here in Raleigh, North Carolina. Here's a fantastic, very compact growing Distilleum called Cast-in Bronze. We're here again shooting this in September, and so it doesn't have a lot of new growth on it right now, but the new growth on it has this amazing bronze coloration, stays super compact. You can tell by the growth habit of this one that it's more spreading than upright. On the tag, I think it says 3 to 4 feet by 3 to 4 feet. I think it's can be easy to keep this one even shorter than 3 to 4 feet, more like 3 feet, and think about it as 4 feet wide. But a lot of times once I put something in the ground, I can immediately tell by the growth habit whether or not it's kind of been, accurately tagged, because if all the growth is going vertical on it, which a lot of Distilleum you'll see, even in the container, you're going to see that vertical growth. That's one that's going to end up head high or taller. Cast in bronze has this great spreading habit. So I can't say this about a lot of camellias, Camellia sasanquas or japonicas. I can't put them in the compact plant video, but I can on this white Shishi. This is October Magic white Shishi from the Southern Living Plant Collection. You can see the growth habit on it, where the limbs come up and then start to fold down. This one can be kept under 4 feet easily. It hasn't stretched at all. It's in a part shade condition where you perfect space for a Camellia sasanqua. Budded up like crazy, and in the process of swelling those buds right now. As the nighttime temperatures drop, that's when the Camellia sasanquas will bloom in the fall. So I expect that around mid-October through about Christmas, really, to have these beautiful white double flowers on a very compact growing camellia. Here's a new crop of autumn Empress Encore azaleas. This is a great compact variety. You can go on the Encore azalea website and find whether you want a small, medium, or large growing varieties. But autumn Empress, it falls into that spot where they're like 3 to 4 feet in height, something like that. So definitely pretty low and compact, but it'll get some size on it. Here we are in September with them in full bloom. Here's a group of climbs hardy gardenias. This is a great compact growing gardenia, perfect for a foundation, perfect for any place you need a little 3 to 4 foot round ball, because that's how this one grows. It blooms heavily in the spring, and then this one has always had the ability to continue to throw on some more flowers the rest of the season. So despite the fact that the flowers are single, it makes up for it in the number of flowers you're going to have over the course of the year. Of course, they're extremely fragrant. I could also put this plant into a video of kind of mid-sized shrubs, because I've seen this one as tall as head high in the landscape. So keep that in mind. This is maintainable between 3 and 4 feet, but if you've got a spot where you can use something that's 5 or 6 feet, this will also work. One of the most compact plants you'll see in this video, this is Gardenia Radicans. This is basically a ground cover gardenia. It can creep up to, I've seen these as tall as 3 feet or so. Gets as wide as you want to let it get, but not in a hurry, so you can come back and prune it whenever you need to prune it. These bloom heavily with double white flowers in the spring, so they're going to bloom typically a little later than other spring flowering shrubs, so more like May into early June. And then as you see here, shooting this in September, it's absolutely loaded with flower buds. So it'll bloom on temperature change as the nighttime temperature started to change a bit here going into late summer, early fall. It's kind of reset it and some new flowers are coming. I will tell you, these do not like wet feet. And so when I plant Gardenia Radicans, I'm kind of careful to mound them up a bit. Make sure I'm not putting them in a wet area. There's a variegated version of this as well that's even more compact and really, really grows very close to the ground. But Gardenia Radicans is super popular. This one is really sun or shade. I see this one doing well in both conditions, again, as long as they're not in wet spaces. Here's a beautiful group of Duke Gardens Plum. This is really a great, super compact growing evergreen shrub. It can actually end up growing 4 to 6 feet in height, 4 to 6 feet in width eventually, but this one is super easy to keep in that 3 foot tall range, maybe a little wider than tall. It has a little bit of a cascading habit. As you can see, these are small. This is a new crop, so they don't have a lot of size on them, but you can see as they come up, each branch weeps down, and so you can get after these hard. This is one of those great part shade plants. It's probably honestly underused, undervalued in the landscape. Extremely drought tolerant. All of these cephalotaxis or false yews, we see them frequently competing well against very established trees in the landscape. And that's from the ground cover ones to the mid-sized ones, even the fastigiate ones are really can get out there and compete with existing trees in the landscape. We found a new crop of inkberry hollies. This variety is called Shamrock. Shamrock was picked years ago because it stays fuller down to the base. Inkberry hollies are a native holly, and they tend to be in the landscape kind of thin down at the bottom. So Shamrock was again picked to stay fuller like this. This is a female selection, if you have a male inkberry holly near it, they'll have these really great black berries through the entire winter. The new growth on it is a lighter color than the older growth, and so it has kind of a really nice two-tone look to it during the growing season. I'm shooting this in September, so they pretty much stopped putting on new growth at this point. Being a native holly, this thing is really tolerant of a lot of different conditions, and so if you have wetter conditions, don't put it down in just water, but you mound it up in an area that doesn't drain as well. This is probably a pretty good choice for that kind of space, or in the driest conditions in your yard. They're also pretty shade tolerant, although they will get a little bit thinner. You have to do a little bit of shearing on them to keep them fuller, but sun or shade. Here's another compact growing Mahonia variety. This one's called Nirihara. I have a hard time saying that word. It's a great soft textured plant, narrow leaf. It'll contrast nicely with almost anything else you're growing in your shade garden. These will start flowering in the fall and flower on and off throughout the winter, just depending on how warm it is. Pollinators are attracted to the flower, so it's blooming at a time of year when other things aren't blooming. So on warmer days, when those flowers open up, bees will take that opportunity to get on them. Soft Caress is probably slightly more compact than this one, but both of them are quite compact, and both of them offer this, great, again, soft texture, kind of a blue-green foliage, new growth on it. It's kind of a lighter green, so, it even has, color contrast on itself as well. So really a great plant, and it will grow in pretty much any part shade to shade condition. This is a great, almost industrial, compact growing plant. This is Lemon Lime Nandina. Gets all the new growth on this plant is bright gold and holds that through the winter as well. These are in a lot of shade here, so they're not quite as bright as when I see them out in the landscape. This one will take full sun or part shade. It's deer resistant, rabbit resistant, urine resistant, or salt tolerant. It's a great salt tolerant plant, so a good coastal plant. This one does not flower, so therefore it doesn't fruit, so it's not invasive like other Nandinas, but again, it has all those qualities of being drought tolerant and really a rugged landscape plant, and then a bright pop of gold in the garden. Here's a Pieris called Temple Bells. This is a white flowering one. These are one of the big kickoffs to spring. It's one of the earliest flowering woody ornamental shrubs. It's a great evergreen plant, and when it had these almost like tassel-like clusters of flowers open up in the late winter, early spring, and they're lightly fragrant. It just gets absolutely covered in these bell-shaped flowers. And then after the flowering is finished, all the new growth that comes out on it has this maroon coloration. Again, shooting this in September, so it doesn't have any of that color to show you right now, but this plant, even after it finishes flowering, that spring flush is almost just as beautiful as the flowering. Really easy shade evergreen plant. Pretty drought tolerant once it's established, but initially it needs some extra water. Somewhat susceptible to root rot, so make sure you mound it up a bit when you plant it. Some of our shady spaces can stay a little wetter sometimes than we think, but really an easy plant to get some color really before almost anything else will be blooming in your shady space. Here's a great compact growing gardenia. This is a Variegated Radicans. Radicans is kind of known as almost like a ground cover gardenia that can end up 3 feet tall and 3 or 4 feet wide. The variegated one stays even lower than that. I've rarely seen this plant above about 18 inches in height. It could almost be argued as a ground cover more than a low growing shrub. It doesn't bloom quite as much as the regular Radicans, but it does have the double white flowers that are very fragrant. It's really more grown for this really great bright variegation. This plant will take almost sun or shade, really. I wouldn't put it in absolute full sun, but slightly less than a full day's sun down to shaded spaces. A couple things on this plant. It will try to revert back to green at some point. And so if you see a green limb coming out on it, get it cut out quick and follow the green piece all the way back down into the middle of the plant and cut it out there. Otherwise, that green one will grow much faster than the variegated one, and it will quickly become a green plant in time. You don't have to do that very often, but maybe once a year. If you see, you're walking past it, you see any green in it, cut it out. Doesn't take but a second. And also it doesn't like wet feet. And so when you plant these, make sure you're mounding them up a bit, not putting them in an area that you know is going to stay wet. Also works great as a container plant, although in zone 7, it had to be protected in the wintertime if it was in a container, but zone 8, 9, even 10, great container plant through the winter. All right, standing in a beautiful crop of Alocasia Laurels. This is a great, super compact growing evergreen shrub with beautiful glossy dark green foliage for part shade or shade conditions. This one, I can put in a video of compact plants because it can easily be kept only 3 feet in height, maybe 5 or 6 feet in width, or it can go up to 5 or 6 feet if you let them. They'll spring flower with white flowers once they get their footing under them, which are very, very showy. And then, they just look like this the rest of the year with this incredible, shiny foliage on them. And incredibly low maintenance. These are susceptible to root rot, and so when you plant them, you want to mound them up just a bit and make sure you're not over watering them. Do check on the watering. Like I say that sometimes, and I'm worried that people won't check on the watering at all. If you plant it properly, mound it up a bit, then you should be able to do normal watering on it and not worry about it staying too wet. I'm going to finish up this compact plant video with Chef's Choice Rosemary. Again, I'll link down below the first compact plant video. I think this will make something like over 40 plants between the 2 videos, and we're going to continue to add to it as we go. This Chef's Choice Rosemary is a fantastic compact grower. This one's been in the ground for a little over 2 years. It's probably a little hair shy of 3 feet. This is about as tall as it will get. It'll try to get wider in time. It can be pruned from the top. It can be pruned from the sides to rein it in some. These are extremely drought tolerant. They have beautiful texture, narrow leaves with a blue-green color. They're deer resistant, drought tolerant, heat tolerant, all kinds of amazing qualities for rosemary in the landscape. There are prostrate growing varieties, meaning flat to the ground. There are taller growing varieties than Chef's Choice. This one was picked for its culinary qualities, to be a dwarf and to have a culinary quality. They also bloom, believe it or not. A lot of people may not know that they have really interesting blue flowers, typically in the cooler season. I'm shooting this in September, and this one happens to have a few flowers, but typically it's more likely in cooler temperatures and early winter and late winter. But Chef's Choice Rosemary, this is just a fantastic plant. And again, it's been here for 2 years and nothing's been done to it since it went into the ground. And really, you don't even have to water it if you get any kind of reasonable rainfall at all. So thank you guys for following along with the channel and watching these plant specific videos. And there are more coming. Thanks for watching.